which could be, 6 months, a year, 2 years away, but it's somewhere in the future. How does the Army continue to train itself as a professional Army, vice just an Army that's in contact at war? And I think that's been an important lesson for them this year. And I think that, watching them go through these collective training events and then learn how to plan, resource, and execute the training for themselves is going to go a long way in their ability to maintain a professional Army well into the future. They still have some very big shortfalls in logistics, in intelligence. They know that those are shortfalls. They continue to work on them. Obviously you can't fix something if you don't recognize it as a shortfall, and they have, and they continue to work, and hopefully with our continued relationship, not necessarily military relationship, but through the OSCI, they will continue to improve in some of those areas.
What do you hope soldiers, America, and the rest of the world will remember about our time in Iraq as 2011 and Operation New Dawn comes to a close?
My hope is that when people see the Tropic Lightning patch, they will remember the division that did something that's never been done before, and that is close out a major theater of war and do it professionally and responsibly. For most Americans, except for really, our older generation, the visions of a war ending are visions of Vietnam, and people holding on to the skid of a Huey as it lifts off from the embassy in Saigon, as it's being overrun, and people pushing equipment into the ocean, and just chaos, not a responsible way to end a war. And it's going to be just the opposite here. People will think of the invasion of Iraq, and they'll think of, most people except for the Marines, will think of the 3rd Infantry Division and the thunder run into Baghdad and the toppling of Saddam, and the statue being pulled over, and how we were able to do that, topple a regime in literally weeks. You'll think of General Petraeus, and you'll think of the surge of forces in 2007, 2006, 7, and 8, and how we, stabilized the country after a near civil war. But I think the thing that will be remembered most is how this war ended, and the fact that not only did we leave Iraq a stable, nascent but growing democracy, we left Iraq with a solid Iraqi Security Forces, Army and police. We left them with a government providing the people of Iraq the opportunity to experience democracy and live as a free people. So we left them with a huge opportunity that they hadn't seen, at least in 30 years. And then we were able to draw all of this military power down, all this 9 years of buildup. We were able to draw it down very professionally, very responsibly, and we were able to get out of country what we had to get out of the country. We were able to transition over to the government of Iraq and the Iraqi Security Forces what we needed to transition over to them. And ultimately we left a Department of State that was well-resourced and set up for success, an Office of Security Cooperation that was well-resourced and set up for success. And we did really what a lot of folks didn't think could be done, and that was draw down 9 years of war in really less than a year, because the first 8 months of our deployment here were focused on advise, train, and assist and partnered counterterrorism operations. And we were already reposturing from day one. From the day we arrived in December, we were already in the process of reposturing, but it was a supporting effort to the primary efforts of what I just discussed. It really wasn't until September that reposturing became our primary effort, and that was a huge task that, again, we'd been planning for a year and a half, but had a lot to execute in those last 4 months. And so again, what I hope people remember is that all the sacrifice, all of the great work of the millions of soldiers who served here before us, that we honored that. We honored their legacy by completing this mission responsibly and professionally, and it was led by the 25th Division.
How do you think the 25th will have to adjust doing shorter and possibly less deployments now, since it's what we've been used to for 10 years?
Well, there's two things that are foremost on my mind. There's a lot that goes into that, and it's not just the shorter deployments and longer dwell time between deployments. It's also you know, we're going into a new environment where we are definitely going to have fewer resources than what we've had in the past based on the current budget and all that's happening with our own economy. But the two things that are foremost on my mind is we have to figure out a way to balance our thirst for training with our families. We can't keep going as though there's 1 year between each deployment, because that kept us on a pace that didn't allow us necessarily the family time that our soldiers deserved between deployments, because there was so much to do to get ready for the next deployment. So, you know, everyone's going to want to get back to training, and we're going to want to get back to being the best Army in the world at fire and maneuver and integrating fire and maneuver, and that's going to take a lot of work. But at the same time, we've got to do that, realizing that we don't have to do this in, you know, 8-9 months before a big training event and then another deployment, that we have more time. And so we've got to have leaders who are thoughtful about how they plan their training while balancing that with family time. My other big concern, and that comes from being the DCGS, is the Command Supply Discipline Program. It's really, for a whole number of reasons over the last 8 years, and all of these deployment after deployment after deployment, and RFIs and other special issues and bulk issues, we have really lost, in my opinion, we have lost the art of command supply discipline and the Command Supply Discipline Program, and really accounting for all of our property and excess, and all the way just down to soldiers' OCIE. So we have got to, in this next year, while we're training, while we're balancing training with families, we have got to reestablish our Command Supply Discipline Program and really become good stewards of the resources that we have, because that big faucet of unlimited resources is off, and we have got to get back to accounting for all that.
Yeah. So do you see that as an easy adjustment?
We've got a professional non-commissioned officer corps, and there's no doubt in my mind that we will get those skills back. It's just going to take a little bit of a mind shift and some leadership and some emphasis. You know, soldiers will do what their leaders, you know, make a priority, and if we make Command Supply Discipline Program a priority, again, it's not a higher priority than training, but it's another priority along with training that we have got to reestablish. Again, the days of, well, you know, we went through I don't know how many different uniform issues and equipment issues through the Rapid Fielding Initiative over the last few years that people just got used to. If you lose it, don't worry about it, you got more coming. And you know, I look at the flippals we've been doing for the last couple of years and how old some of these are. It's what we used to call report a survey.
Oh, okay.
And now it's called a flipple. You know, it's how we account for missing property. Mm-hmm. And I read these, and it just, from company commanders on down, and not that they're not smart. In fact, I think we've got the best junior non-commissioned officers and company grade officers we've ever had, and they're tested in combat. But they haven't grown up in an environment like many of our more senior non-commissioned officers, and now, you know, senior field grade officers, in an environment where you really understood the importance of hand receipts and doing your 10% inventories and sub-hand receipting and conducting inspections and making sure that the property is up to date, and then all your hand receipts are up to date. And so we've got to institutionalize that again back into our culture. You know, we've got to institute those systems in the Command Supply Discipline Program that are critical for us to be professionals and be good stewards of our property and taxpayer dollars, you know, without swinging so far that there's this perception that training isn't important, that all we're focused on is counting beans.